Hi, hello everyone. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. We really appreciate seeing all you guys. And my name is Pam Lundquist, and I'm the coordinator for Georgetown Cares, which is a youth substance abuse prevention coalition in the town of Georgetown. And we've been around since 2008. And I just, I'm so grateful to this wonderful supportive police force that we have, and Chief Donald Cubmore and Detective James Rodden are here, and they've got experience, a lot of experience around social host liability law. And tonight is mainly, it's about how we can, and we're coming up on graduation time right now. Graduation is going to be June 14th, and it's a wonderful, incredible time to celebrate the achievements of our young people who have been working hard, and we've been shepherding them for 12 long years, and naturally they're going to want to celebrate, and naturally they're going to want to get together with their family and their friends, and we want to help them do that in a safe, healthy way. I heard you mention graduating in the 70s, and I also graduated from high school in the 70s, and I remember being a young person, and I remember going around and wanting to go to parties and trying to connect with people, and a lot has changed since the 70s. Some there's stuff that hasn't changed, and what really hasn't changed are our young teenagers and the teenage mind and the teenage brain, and how they want to feel close, and they want to connect, and they want to have fun together. And we live in a very small town too, and I also grew up in a similar kind of small town, and I remember people saying that they were bored and they didn't know what to do, and they didn't, so there were drinking parties back then. And what has changed is what we know today about the adolescent brain, and about why drinking and drugging and all that are so much more dangerous for the adolescent brain than for the adult brain. I liken the difference. The adolescent brain is a little bit like just brownie batter, just mix the eggs and whatever it is you put together, and it's all soupy. And an adult brain is like a baked brownie, of which there are some right over there. And when you pour alcohol or something into it, if you pour it on top of the baked brownie, it's still going to look pretty much like a baked brownie. It's not going to look so different. But if you pour it into the brownie batter, it just all mixes, and it's different. It affects them differently. They don't know. 80% of adolescent drinking is binge drinking. That's 4 or 5 drinks at a time, which can be very, very dangerous, and they can get alcohol poisoning. All kinds of things can happen. So, I have to say, thinking about my parents and what they told me, and what my friends' parents would tell them, they really didn't understand that there was a difference. They really didn't get that it was different for us as children than for them. So, I hate to say it, but my parents told me it was okay to drink and drive. They didn't know any better. They really didn't know any better. And today we do, and we have a lot of statistics, a lot of study, a lot of science behind it. The drugs have changed since back then. Since back then, marijuana was like 7 times as weak as it is now today. The level of THC that's in marijuana, that's on the street, that kids are getting a hold of, is so much higher. It's just, and that, marijuana drugged driving is, I'm sure you guys can tell us, is a very dangerous thing. It affects the perception, it affects all kinds of things. So a lot is the same, a lot has changed, but when we know better, we do better. And today we know better in so many ways, and these guys are going to tell us about, because we want our children to learn how to socialize in a healthy way. We want them to feel like they can get together, because and without drinks, without drugs, we want them to have the skills, the ability to play basketball, have fun, talk with each other, laugh, sit around a campfire, whatever you want to do, and you want them to feel comfortable having parties, being at parties in a safe way, because they're going out into college, and college is a very different environment, and you want them to have a foundation and to know for themselves how to make healthy choices and how to take care of themselves and how to not have any regrets. And we we also as parents want to know how to reduce our own liability. When we say yes to our children, yes, you can have that graduation party, yes, you can invite 15 of your friends and they can invite friends and all this, what kind of best practices can we put into place so that we can protect our own liability? Some of us may have umbrella insurance policies, but even when you get up to $2 million of liability, that may not be enough to cover what could come back at you, depending on what happens at the parties that you have. So with that, I will let you go, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. For those who don't know me, I'm Don Cudmore. I'm the police chief here in Georgetown. Just a little bit of background about myself. A lifetime resident, came here at a very young age. I've been living here, I think, like 46, 7 years now. And I went to school here. I went to school in this building. I went to the high school. So Georgetown is near and dear to me, as are all of the residents and family that live here. My experiences, I've been on the police department now for just about 30 years. And you can imagine in 30 years what I've seen and had to deal with our residents. And as Pam had said, that things were always different when we were younger, growing up, and things should be different today, because I can remember, and many of you can too, losing high school colleagues, high school friends and classmates. And because of the statutory changes in laws today, we've been very, very lucky. I myself personally have given 4 death notifications to parents in Georgetown in my career. It's absolutely the worst thing that you have to do. 2 of them were on Father's Day. So you just can imagine the hurt and the pain. And my job and my mission is to make sure that doesn't happen. And that's why I do support the strict laws and guidelines that are provided by the district attorney's office and the laws and rules that are in place today. Just a couple that have saved lives, why we're not dealing with teenage death like we did several years ago. The passenger restriction law with kids, the junior operator's license, the strict enforcement of teenagers being in possession of alcohol. Those things have saved lives. And we always say in our age group, we say, well, geez, back when we were kids, or back when we used to, it doesn't matter. We're saving lives today, and that's why we do this. The police department is fathers, mothers, sons, and daughters. We're just regular people trying to save and save our children from hurting themselves or hurting somebody else. So this presentation, just as a bit of a disclaimer, is developed by Essex District Attorney Jonathan Blodgett, our DA. We work very closely with the DA's office. Myself and the superintendent sign various agreements with the DA so that we can work with the youth of the school district, as well as share information. It's an open agreement, and we do it during prom season, we do it during graduation, and we do it throughout the year. There's a collaborative throughout the year. I apologize, I'm suffering from allergies, so just bear with me. As it was stated in the introduction, alcohol is the #1 youth drug problem today, and that's what we as parents deal with, and that's what the children are dealing with. I won't bore you with statistics, but it's pretty clear that alcohol consumption is the problem. As Pam had alluded to with regard to brain development and things like that, I'll just let you read the slide. I'm not going to sit there and read the presentation verbatim, but we're here tonight basically to discuss the underage drinking issue and the legal problems that come with it, social host liability, and the potential problems that someone who's underage can run into drinking alcohol. And obviously those other issues, high-risk activities, being victims of crime, sexual assault, additional drug use, violence, those are all also involved. We believe, and we've experienced firsthand, that the parents are probably the most influential person in all these children's lives that we deal with. Strong parenting is clearly in favor for us. When we deal with someone who's had some issues, when we have parents who have come down and taking control of the situation. We're the parents, and we should be in control of it. And it does influence teenagers, and I'm sure the superintendent can attest in the education realm as well. You can see that just the stats provided by the DA's office, that the parental influence clearly helps. The students who report high levels of parental attention are significantly less likely than those who report low levels of parental attention to use alcohol and marijuana. And I think we have our own statistics to back that up. I saw this slide. I reduced this. This was about a 50-slide presentation. I reduced it to about 18 slides.
Thank you.
But I think, yes, and I think that, you know, I saw this slide because I think as moms and dads, you know, this is what we're given, and then they grow up, and then we got to deal with that. So, but they still listen to us. I have teenage children myself. They don't listen all the time, but they do listen, and your influence is very, very important. Again, I think Pam had the same information probably that the DA's office had about binge drinking and things like that, which is extremely risky behavior for the kids. School grades suffer as a result of this if kids are going down the path of too much alcohol consumption. And probably the biggest thing is, and we've all read the newspapers, we've seen the time and time again on television and on the news, that alcohol kills 6.5 times more young people than any other illicit drug combined. So that's a lot. Getting to the legal problems as to what our purview is here is it's clearly illegal to possess alcohol if you're under the age of 21. And possession, this is the most, I'm not going to say controversial, but it's where people get confused because of a gray area. There's actual possession, there's consumption, and then there's constructive possession. And constructive possession is if you're in the presence of the alcohol. Somebody else has the alcohol and you're there. You're constructively in possession of that, whether it be in a motor vehicle, someone's home. So that particular possession is why kids who aren't even drinking at a party will get the same consequence as someone who's actually drinking. And you know, we've had conversations with parents about the level of fairness, and you know, a child, a young kid doesn't drink, but he's at the party. Should he be at the party? Shouldn't he be at the party? Well, the reason for that particular tightening of those laws is because we're trying to reduce the tragedies that are occurring with kids in possession of alcohol. And it says here concerning the minor actually drinking or holding alcohol in order to be considered in possession. And that includes a house, a motor vehicle, a public place. Obviously, the expectation of the legal ramifications of being in possession of alcohol if someone's under 21, criminal record. A juvenile record does not disappear, even though that there's diversion programs and the like. It follows you around for the rest of your life. So you'll always have to disclose it on a job application if you're arrested. So there is some legal problems for someone, a minor who's in possession of alcohol and is subsequently charged or arrested. Just a stat that obviously in Massachusetts, students who regularly use drugs use 5 times more than those who do not drink. More bad and risky behavior. And this is an important part from the legal perspective is 2 out of 3 teens said it was easy to get alcohol from their homes without their parents even knowing it. So again, the parental influence is important. You need to be aware, you need to pay attention. And more than 40% of underage drinkers report getting free alcohol from adults age 21 and over. Because, I mean, let's face it, when they're in college, you go to college when you're 18, and during your college years you actually become of age, but people who are at college are still not of age. So there's that unique mix of students. Social host, and we'll get, once I get through this presentation, No, without getting into particulars about a case and playing the what-if game, the bottom line is, as a parent, you need to have a zero tolerance for alcohol in your home if you're hosting a party where minors are in possession, where minors are present. And if you do, then the consequences are you're procuring that alcohol for that individual. It's that simple. And we can get into the responsibility of hosting a party. There are plenty of ways to host a party without having to worry whether someone brings alcohol to your home. I myself coach softball for Georgetown. I've had the softball parties at my house. It was crystal clear. You came, you got a ride. You weren't allowed to drive yourself. And the parent is responsible for that child. And I made sure that I was there until that party was over. Parents who go to bed, parents who go visit their friends and the party's going on, well, of course something bad can happen. It's your property, whether you're under control of it at the particular time or not, you're responsible. And we'll cite some cases for you. You know, the tragic stories of police response to a home where there's been a party. Clearly, we have a couple of cases that we'll give out to the folks here where people have been criminally charged. The important thing, though, is there are a lot of kids who don't drink and do drugs. And I've had some very poignant conversations with Pam through the Georgetown Cares program. As I said, you know, we want to make sure that we take care of the good kids, too. That we spend so much time focusing on these problems, that we have a lot of kids who aren't doing the things that some kids are doing. You know, we can't forget them in this mix. And I want to make sure that we stress that, because there are a lot of kids who are not involved in that risky behavior. And again, the driving force is parental guidance. And there are many, many websites that parents can go to for assistance if they're going to host a party or they're having a problem with their child. The school district has many counseling venues for that. And obviously, as a parent, I myself, as difficult as it can be, have to have these conversations with your kids. If you don't talk about it, then you'll never know what's going on. I don't want to preach about how to do counseling and care for the child. I want to get more into the specificity of the social host, which was our mission here tonight. Obviously, as you guide your child growing up, going to parties, you have to be observant when they come home. You have to see if they're under the influence. We know as parents what our child was before they left and when they came home. You know, don't fool yourself if you feel that your child's drinking or doing some type of illegal drugs. Then you have to address it, because it will just get worse. Okay, and there's just some websites there that help parents deal with this. So I had to show that as a disclaimer with the district attorney's office, because when we talk about these cases, they want to make sure that we stay very generic in our descriptions, because every single case is different. You respond to a house party, there's all kinds of factors, mitigating factors, there's evidence that changes the dynamic of any case that could potentially be prosecuted. So the specificity of the actions at the home can be so different, and the penalties are different. I'm going to turn it over to Detective Rod and discuss a couple of just cases that he's familiar with. I'll address the.
I'm sorry, could you just go to the slide before this about what to do if you find that your children are drinking or drugging or whatever? Because it's not always a lot of, yeah, because I think, you know, many parents just have no idea what to do if they find this to be the case. And it's, you know, like you said,
Sure.
more adolescents, more kids in high school don't drink and drug than do, for sure. And study after study will show you that. So that's really important to keep in mind. But if you find that your child does, wait until your child is sober, express concern, monitor, check with friends, parents. Okay. I would just maybe want to add to that, go to the pediatrician, just to consult
Sure.
with the doctor. And, you know, so that the doctor is aware of everything.
Right. And, excuse me. And like I said before that, as far as the counseling aspects, I don't purport to be an expert in that area. We have folks within the district attorney's office and juvenile justice programs that help us with that. And I think that parents need to reach out to counselors. Superintendent, they have programs that they can reach out to at the schools concerning you know, this type of behavior if it's actually going on. The problem for us is by the time people call us, the activity has occurred, there's a party involved. Our job is to create a safe environment to get kids back to where they need to be, investigate a potential crime if there's adults involved or if there's not adults involved, so that we can then take appropriate action if there's been some wrongdoing. And so our primary mission is, when we respond as the police, is to create a safe environment. And that's why we contact parents immediately. We need to facilitate rides, medical attention at times. And then begins the system assisting these people if we feel there's a problem, if it's an ongoing problem for these kids. The Safe Prom and Graduation initiative, I'll just pass that around, is something that we signed with the superintendent and the district attorney's office. And basically that it just reaffirms our collaborative of trying to create a safe environment for the students. I think that the open dialogue between the police department and the schools is always there. Where we see sometimes a breakdown is with the parents. You know, we have children, young adults who possibly are in trouble, and we have to look to the parents for some guidance too in dealing with this. And then the consequences. I mean, you know, if your child's arrested, there's consequences with that. There's legal ramifications. There's financial. And getting into the social host element where you talk about civil liability, I went on the internet today just because we were coming here tonight, and I Googled social host liability. And what popped up was not necessarily the definition and statutes within Massachusetts general law, but all of these attorneys' decisions and rendering about what they believe is the best venue for a defense. So I was somewhat amazed that the Commonwealth's website came up first, at least defined, and that initiative was described. But then the rest of the entries are, if you're charged with social host, will your insurance cover it? Will you be covered on a civil penalty by your child if your child does something wrong? And it's really the wrong tact. I mean, if you're worried about social host in the environment of drinking or procuring alcohol for minors, it starts there. It starts at eliminating that so that you don't have to enact your homeowner's policy for a civil suit. And being responsible. We have responded to parties before. Loud parties. There's a myth out there that we ride around looking for cars in front of houses to see if we can break up a party. And that is a myth. We're dispatched to people's homes because of noise complaints and neighbors, and we have to now investigate that. And we've gone to house parties, and the parents are sleeping, they're not there. Well, that's a problem. And we have charged people with social host violations in Georgetown. We've charged people with keeping a disorderly house, because that is irresponsible behavior. And it's as simple as that. This case here, I'm going to show this type of I'll take a break because I can't talk anymore.
You're great.
People that don't know me, my name is Jim Rodden. I've been with the Georgetown Police Department for about 12 years now. Prior to that, I was a high school teacher, high school coach. So when I came over to Georgetown, I was the SRO for 3.5 years. So I've seen over a 20-year period the change in philosophy in this this whole idea of prom season, partying, and looking at it, and some of the major excuses we get now is, well, I'd rather have control over my kids. I'll have the party, I'll collect the keys, and they'll be safe at my house. And my response to some of the people that have given me that answer, have you tried to wrestle an 18-year-old boy who's under the influence? Because I have, and we have a hell of a time trying to keep him under control. Don't kid yourself. If you provide alcohol and you think that you're providing a safe forum, you have no idea how those kids are going to react. And you could have a problem, a big problem on your hand before you realize it. And then we get involved. Okay, we've had to fight kids that have been under the influence, that have been at safe houses. We have safe houses in this town. People that allow their kids to do whatever they want in the basement, in the backyard, upstairs, in the game room, and when we show up, well, I had no idea they were doing it. You know what? You're the adult. You're the responsible one. Not your job to be their friend. It's your job to be their adult. We have 5 parents here. And as I was when I was a teacher on parent night, I'd have parents come into the classroom, and it would be all the good kids' parents. The parents that needed to hear what we had to say weren't there. So I'm sure, I don't even know you people, or most of you. But the people that I don't know, I'm sure your kids aren't pros. Okay? But your kids are out there. I've spoken to some of you about kids that your sons and daughters have been hanging around with, and it's a concern, and it should be a concern. Just a simple construction possession is, if you're an adult, if you're in a party at a house and there's alcohol there, you don't even have to touch it. You can be charged and bounce off the team for 25% of the season that first time. That's part of MIAA rules. Okay, we used to have it when we were coaching. Parents would fight it. You know, the simple fact is, you're not 21. You shouldn't be around it. Period. Adults, don't try to be your kids' friends. Don't try to be your kids' friends' friends. It's not your job. 10 years from now, if you want to be the friends, and then you knock yourself out. But you know what? I don't. You ask my son. Half the time we're not even on speaking to him. But hopefully he's safe. We contacted the DA's office, asked for a couple of high-profile cases. You don't hear about a lot of them. The ones you do hear, they're major ones. Someone's getting hurt, someone's getting injured, someone's killed, alcohol poisoning. A couple of them that they sent over within the last 2 or 3 years. Social media is playing a role in it. The one in Beverly. And I know this lady. She had a party. There were Jello shots. Denied. Her face and name was splattered all over the Salem News. And when they finally came up with the pictures, she was with the kids at the party. She finally admitted it. Okay, so that's something that you're going to have to deal with. If you think that something's going to happen, you're going to expect charges to come out. Your name is going to be all over the paper. You're going to be spending all kinds of money for defense lawyers. Okay, it just in the long run is not worth it.
So what are some of what are some of the best practices you can have at parties? You know, like say you're having a graduation party and your son is invited, 15 of his friends, and they bring, what can they bring? What if they bring? They
shouldn't be bringing anything.
Shouldn't be bringing anything.
If you're having a party, you provide everything.
Right.
And as an adult, you need to be on top of them.
Yeah.
You can't just assume that they're not going to do it.
Right.
And being aware, and they're down in the basement, go down in the basement every 15, 20 minutes, see what's going on.
Yeah, right. Checking
you just can't assume that they're not going to do it, because there's certain kids, and the majority of the kids in this town don't do a lot of stuff.
No.
We see it on the front line. We deal with that 90-10 theory. 10% of the kids are causing problem 90% of the time when we're dealing with it. Okay? The majority of the kids aren't doing a lot of bad things in this town. but those kids are infiltrating, they're with your kids. And it doesn't take that much to persuade them at this age. Okay, and if they're in an atmosphere, everybody's doing it, peer pressure, they may get wrapped up into it. The adult in that house needs to take control of that house. And don't fool yourself in thinking that you're providing a safe environment. If my kid's there and you're allowing my kid to drink and he goes out and something, God forbid, happens, and there's a life-altering event, he's killed or something, I'm going to have some major issues with him, just like any other parent here. Okay?
And can I just ask, at parties, say in the last 2 to 3 years, what kind of substances have you ever found besides alcohol at any underage? I mean, if it's none, that's great.
Yeah, no,
that's awesome.
you know what? Marijuana is everywhere.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Don't kid yourself. Your kids are being exposed to it, whether they're partaking in it or not. I don't know, but it is the majority of the car stops of high school kids in our town. We pull them over. We can smell something in. Okay. My son has a car, has his license. I go in that car just about every day, just to see what's going on. You know, there are people out there that won't go in their kid's car, and they have no idea. You know, they're out, and smoking marijuana and driving, you're still impaired, whether it's
Right.
OUI drugs or OUI alcohol. And that's a big misconception with a lot of people. They're only smoking marijuana. Well, they're still impaired. You still can be arrested for it.
I think too the changes in the social issues today, we as police officers have to deal with that. In Massachusetts, the medical marijuana, it used to be a debate, now it's finally going to be law, and it's still in process. There is still no definitive enforcement with regard to that new legislation, and it's basically a wait and see for the dispensaries and the growing facilities and so forth. But to the youth, that we have people telling us that marijuana is legal, and it's not legal. It's just there's a civil penalty imposed versus that criminal penalty. It's still a federal drug violation, and that's a conflict with state and federal law. That doesn't affect our ability to enforce the possession of that marijuana without particular medical requirements, which are still being worked out. There is no definitive enforcement with that. What is clear is with regard to alcohol. And when the detective said about what do you do as a parent when you're going to host a party, I think that's what, you need to sit down and have parameters with your children. And if you're going to host a party, remember that you're responsible for that party. Every person that comes into your home on that evening, day, whenever you're going to have that party, is your responsibility until they leave. And then even after they leave, there's still your responsibility if something illegal has occurred on your property. And that's the social host issue. And to sit as an adult, as a father, as a parent, how to hold a teenage party, like the detective said, maybe we may operate a little differently because of who we are. But let's remember, if you're going to have 15, 18-year-olds at your house, you need to set up a plan if you're concerned that some of them may bring alcohol or drugs to that party. And I had said it before in the introduction. If you're going to have a party, that nobody gets to bring their own vehicle to the party. They have to be dropped off. So now they've lost their mechanism by which to come to the party and leave the party on their own. If they need to be picked up, have their parents pick them up. And if they don't like the rule, you don't have the party. It's that simple. It's your house, it's your responsibility, it's your children, and you're having our children at your house if in fact you're hosting the party. I don't find it to be that difficult myself. I'm sure the detective feels the same way. And if you do have separate game rooms and the like, if you don't walk through that area, and if you're not attentive to all your guests during that entire time of that party, then you're not paying attention. You just can't have 15, 20 kids in a basement, think everything's gonna be okay. You need to really monitor their activity. And we know who our kids are hanging around with, so you know the condition and the actions of these kids when they came to your home. If things start to change dramatically, so that the police don't have to be called, call their parents. That's what you should do. You had asked earlier, well, what happens if things start to go south and you're having a party? Well, the pre-plan before the party was you got a contact number for every single person in that party. They had to give you a contact person, an adult, a trusted adult, mother, father, whoever it is. If there's a problem, you immediately call them, party's over. It's that simple. We need to have that zero tolerance when you're hosting a party because of these stories that are happening. This was a sentence that this woman got. This was another case that came out of Salem District Court. The judge announced that it was an underage drinking party. 37-year-old female had an underage drinking party that she was found to be responsible for in her home. Judge announced that he would impose a maximum penalty, 1 year in jail, 11 months, 2 years probation, and over $20,000 in fines and a host of other conditions for her release for having that party. I mean, if that's not an example enough to ensure that if you're going to host a party for your teenagers, that you're absolutely sure, number one, that you can handle it. If you can't handle it, don't have the party. Don't have it. Because the responsibility is huge today. You know, I know that in the past there have been senior sleepovers at various houses and things like that, and a lot of people are just electing not to do it. It's just too big. It's, you know, when you have 100 people at your house, kids are sleeping outside in tents and they're doing all those things, it's very difficult to control that environment.
You're us, yeah.
What's that? Well, what happens though, and that's an interesting dynamic because in other communities, and we have done private details at people's homes when they've had a party, but you have to remember something though. When you do that, if something goes wrong, the law enforcement officer has to act accordingly. So just because the police are there doesn't mean that it will solve your problem. It will assist you in a deterrence. It will assist you if you do have a problem. But remember, the repercussions are the same if a problem develops. People have hired us at parties. You know, thankfully, while we were there, I don't believe we've ever had any problems with private details. But you have to be sure if you even want that, because that's another Pandora's box that you may have to deal with. I had some questions that had been posed to us. It says here, if my child hosts a party while I'm away and I do not know about it, can I still be held liable? I think we all know the answer to that question in today's day and age. You know, and how do we prevent that? Well, I think we know that well, you cannot go away, I mean, right? So that would be the first and probably the most effective thing. But secondly is that not only, regardless of the age of your child, I mean, I have some agreements with some close friends in my family that if I happen to be away, then I have another set of adults who are acting on my behalf with my property and my children, even though they're 18 years old, approaching 19 years old, because that's how important it is to me that I know what's going on. And I think that in our mind sometimes it's overkill, that we're actually, you know, we're watching too much, we're worrying too much about it, but it's really the necessary tools that you need to try to prevent this from happening while you're away for a day or a night for a wedding or whatever, and you come home and there's a party that you did not authorize in your home, and your children made a mistake.
It's called being a parent.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you have to sacrifice. And there's a lot of people that will, well, it's my life. We run into people. Well, I have a right to my life too. Well, you have two 18-year-olds that are running wild. You have a responsibility to watch them too.
And you can
I
see
always
by
say parenthood is the end of me first.
Yeah, you're a parent.
and you can see by the detective's responses, and that he's working the night shift out there. He's working in dealing with the kids and adults when we have to run into parents. And like I say, the most effective parents that we find in dealing with are the ones that take responsibility for what the child has done, and we know that we're putting that kid in good hands because the parent's engaged. The proverbial question that we always get is, well, we have a child that's in trouble, whether it be an illegal activity or a substance in a motor vehicle or at a house. If the first question is, well, why did you stop him? And did you have a right to stop him? We know what we're dealing with. Because if it was my child, the fact is, prior to the stop, there was something bad going on in that vehicle, and you've now identified it. I don't care why you stopped. It's irrelevant to me if there was something bad going on in the car or in the house. Because now we know that we're in that arena with that adult that really, what's the problem? Is the fact that the police stopped the vehicle the problem, or the fact there was marijuana, underage drinking, and possibly operating under the influence of alcohol or drugs? So that's the cause and effect that we deal with.
Those parents, when we start dealing with those parents, those kids become repeat offenders to us. When you have a parent that comes up and they step up and say, my kid did something wrong, how do we, we're going to back them up, we're going to go through the court system. You very rarely see a repeat with that. The parents that come in complain, the police are out to get my kid, they're picking on my kid did nothing wrong. Those are the ones we constantly run in, and that's at 10%.
90%.
We're dealing with them 90% of the time. 90% of the kids we don't deal with. So the kids are watching the parents to see how they react. Kid gets in trouble, and the parents immediately take their kid's side. You're justifying that behavior to the kid, and the kid knows his parents are going to fight for him. I'm not saying don't stand up for your kid, but when you start bad mouthing us about something that your kid, when he got caught legitimately, he's ready-handed, and now all of a sudden we're the ones that are the problem. Think about what you're saying in front of your kids, because they're listening, and they're going to justify that next night out, that behavior. Well, you know what, Mom and Dad thinks that guy's a jerk anyway, so I'm just
And it sounds stern, but
Model respect.
those are real life scenarios that we deal with, and it's something that we're trained to do.
If somebody's going on vacation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do they go to the police department and say, look, I'm going on vacation. If you drive by my house and see 20 cars in the driveway, I want you to go up there and check that out?
What we have in Georgetown is we do have a vacation request check that we will provide residents.
Right.
And there'll be specific contact made to that person who had requested that. The problem with it is that if the person who's requesting that, and the house is supposed to be vacant and it's not, obviously that would preempt the call to that contact person. But if people are there for legitimate means, if we enter that property and we do a well-being check on that property and there is something wrong there, then we're going to have to act. Mm-hmm. That's the only problem with it. And if those people are there lawfully, they're lawfully at the residence, and then there is a person, the people who own the property, mom, dad, whoever, having the police go there, and people are there for legal means. Not to play the what-if game, but every circumstance would be different. We would certainly report back to the homeowner that, look, you said there was no one at your home. There are 20 cars parked out front. And they say, well, we want you to check that out. We now have the ability to go into that property. However, what the officers observe, the constitutionality of entering the home, will depend on what they observe on that doorstep at that threshold. It won't be a free, open the door, everybody out. There has to be, and that's why I don't like to play the what-if game. The officers who respond have to articulate what they're observing. I mean, if there are people jumping off the roof and there are beer cans flying everywhere, now we know what we can do, right? But if there are 20 cars parked in the driveway and there is no noise, we knock on the door, it just doesn't appear to be anything that's illegal going on, we have to move cautiously about entering that home and determining who's in charge, how many people are there. So it's not as easy as saying, there are 20 cars on my house, I want you to go break up the party. Because what if it isn't a party?
Would it be a deterrent, though, to the kids to be
Absolutely.
able to say, I've reported it to the police,
Absolutely.
if there's 20 cars, the cops
Absolutely.
are gonna be here?
Absolutely.
And that will sort of
Yes.
slow things down.
And on that vacation request, which is on our roll call, and we have many of them that we do for people, that would certainly be a deterrent for the child or the children of that home, realizing that, there are drive-by checks
Right.
being done for the property. Any other questions?
It's a fine line as a parent. I'm hosting a graduation party for my son. It's in the middle of the day, 3 to 7. It's also Father's Day, so I'm kind of killing two birds with one stone. Dad's going to be up on the screened-in porch with my family. He likes to have a couple of beers. I need
Talk slow.
to make sure that,
Where are you?
I'm just thinking that sodas should be in soda cans, there won't be any cups.
That's being proactive.
So I still want to host a party, but am I still need to shake down who comes in saying, you can't, your car, or you have to get a ride here, or I just think that's maybe too much for a day party.
You know what's
where
great
it's gonna
about
be
that?
outside.
But you know what's great about that is because you've already made a conscious effort in determining what your potential exposure and liabilities are. So you just said it. You said that may be overkill for this party that you've planned, specifically because of who's coming, who you have there for either backup or support. So that's why when I made that disclaimer that not everything is etched in stone when you play the what if game, because you're absolutely right. If it's Father's Day and you're hosting a party, because there's an adult party and then there's the graduation party for the graduates and the kids. It is a fine line.
I mean, I don't want the food too close to the beer, for the grown-ups, and it's a
I'm sure
logistic
you've already
nightmare.
spoken to his son.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and
But-
he's aware of what the expectation of his friends are. And he's aware of what your expectation of his guests are. And parents that have established that foundation from preschool all the way up can do that. And obviously, as an adult watching what's going on at the party, but you know what, you'll see your son looking out and not wanting problems at his property.
I could see that happening, but I don't want to just say, none of his friends are going to do that. We need to assume
Sure.
somebody is going to try. So we just watch what people come in.
Yep.
You have to be very diligent.
Yeah.
You have to be observant, and you have to be in control of your party. And that's what we find when we go to a house that's out of control and there are adults there. That's what's happened. The adults in this scenario have lost control of the home, and they've lost control of the guests. And there are many responses to noise complaints that we go to the parties, and everything's fine. I mean, we're talking the exception here, not the rule. And I want people to realize that. We can go to many of house and noise complaints, and the parents are in control. Because, like we said, 90% of the folks that live in our town are good, hardworking parents that we can entrust our kids to go to their homes and they do the right thing. But there are some that don't do the right thing. So I would venture to bet that because you know there's that fine line, that you're being diligent in your pre-planning, because that's what it is. You're pre-planning for this party. You're kind of you're anticipating potential problems. You realize the perfect thing that you said. The party's from 3 to 7. It's not from 3 to question mark. Those parties are bad because you don't know when the party ends, and the parents on the other end don't know when the party ends. So when it's 3 to question mark, is it going until Sunday or Monday? I don't know. But it's nice you said 3 to 7, because at 7, in my eyes, it's still daylight out. It's time to, the graduation party's over and everyone's had a good time. So it sounds like you have a good plan in place. It is a fine line, and you assume that liability and responsibility when you do that, when you decide to host a party. but I have confidence it's gonna be a good party, because I know who you are.
Yeah, I don't remember getting the invitation.
Oh, I went out today.
Yeah.
Any other questions that we can answer on social host? And is straightforward as it appears that we present it. In our eyes, as the police, it is. It is that clear. You go to a home and there's alcohol there and there's kids who are underage. It's pretty clear that something has systematically broken down at that house or that event. And because, you know, when you read the complications of the social host law, civil versus criminal, and does homeowners insurance cover and things like that, in reality, there are different answers to all of those questions. Because if something really bad happens, it doesn't matter what your homeowner's policy is, because it's going to be too large. So you're still going to be responsible. And if it's criminal in nature, you know, the consequences for jobs, being able to insure a property again, another, you know, you need to move on from a tragic event like that. So I think that it's very difficult to answer those what-if questions. The bottom line is as parents, homeowners, and the host of a party, you have to have a zero tolerance. And nobody likes that word, I know, a zero tolerance, but in this case, it's true. And the one question that was asked was, if you're hosting a party and all of a sudden you automatically assume everything's okay, you do one of your patrols, for lack of a better word, and you find someone's drinking. They say, what do you do? There should have been a contact person for that underage person for you to call to say, come and get this individual. You should have a phone number for every single person that's coming to your home that you're responsible for. It is.
It's a small town, which is great, and I have a lot of phone contacts and I phone. But there's going to be someone that somebody else would have.
Because you know what the backup or you know what the alternative is? You call us. Right? So if you have 15, 18-year-olds at your home and you're responsible for them and you don't know who their parents are, I know you, we know each other, so I know you if I was hosting the party. But if you have 5 kids and you have no idea who they are or where they're from, if you don't know how to contact somebody in the event something goes awry at your home or that you're responsible for, what do you do with them? Ask them to leave? What if they can't? So if you have that contact information, you're pre-planning. You know, if it's predictable, it's preventable. One of our risk managers in law enforcement, Gordon Graham, teaches us that all the time. If you can predict it, you can prevent it. I didn't make that up, that's his saying. And I think it's trademarked too, so. Gordon Graham is a law enforcement risk manager. And I like that saying because it's true. You know, it's so true. If you know 5 people are at your home, you don't know who they are, what are you going to do if something bad happens? You know, so you can say, hey, I know I got a phone number for him, her, this one, and now you're able to pre-plan if something were to happen.
So if something happened and then you called their parent and their parent took them, you're no longer liable for them?
Once you take that child,
Child.
give it to another parent, say, here's your son, your daughter, they were at my home, something's happened here. Take them to the hospital, do something with them, and that parent accepts and assumes responsibility. And if they don't take them, that's why you pay taxes, you call us.
But
We'll
if
make
they
sure
take
they get
them,
the help that
then
they
it's no
need.
longer our responsibility.
You hope that
Well, you hope
all
that they
of the
don't-
factors
they
that
don't
led up to that phone
I mean-
call, just to be sure, all of the factors that led up to that phone call with regard to that child has no implication on what happened at your home at that time. If somebody's passed out drunk on the lawn chair and they've been there for 3 hours, they're going to look and say, where were you in this?
Right.
But if they arrive and they're not in the condition they should be, or you're concerned about their behavior or their activity, make the call. Call the parents. We're responsible for these kids in every way, shape, and form. College, health insurance, we're responsible for them. So if a parent calls, come and get your kid. And that's the advice that I try to give people. You know, and it's their as much as it is your responsibility for that window when you have them, it's their child. Get them involved, get them over there, and fix the problem and follow up even, if you're concerned. That would be my advice. Anything else? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.